CEO of the Preparedness Network, and Chris Martin, President of Technology Services at Micon General Contractors. Let's give him a huge round of applause.
Can you hear me all right? Testing, 1, 2, 3. We're going to meet each other for the first time.
Hey, good to meet you for the first time. How y'all doing? Oh, a microphone. I guess I need that. There you go. So what are we talking about?
That's a good question. We are talking about the challenges in datafication.
Challenges datafication. So what is datafication?
That's a really good question. So I've heard, I think we all have, the buzzwords over the years, cloud journey, digital transformation, digital workforce. I don't know, what have you heard?
Well, you know, it's the one biggest problem in this is what is data, you know, and how do we manage data? You know, there is so much that is a really big problem in managing and maintaining data. We all know that this came back with the Congress saying, oh, TikTok must sell to a United States company, and because it's a China. Well, you know, there's a lot of problems in datafication and security and all that. Is China really the problem, or is, you know, is Facebook just as bad a threat as China is? Because when you have your data when your data is being captured by TikTok, it's also being captured by all the other platforms, and they are monetizing that platform. When you have a Gmail account, you know, they say people think that's free. It's not. They make $30,000 to $50,000 a year on your email because they own your email. They have the right to go through it and take your data and strip it and do all that stuff. So that's kind of like datafication for me, is the proper management and ethics behind the massive problem of datafication.
Very true. So I actually work in the construction industry, and for those of you who are familiar with that industry, we've been paper-based for, what, 1,000 years?
Yeah.
Maybe longer. One of the problems there is that the collaboration is really difficult when you do paper. So we've seen a massive increase in performance, and we've done a lot better with collaborating with our industry partners when we started digitizing things. But we did not have a standard. Everybody started digitizing in their own way. So interconnectivity is a big problem. When you first start digitizing something, you go, oh great, now we've got a digital copy of it.
Right.
CEO comes along and says, guess what, I want to do data analytics. You're like, that's fantastic. All our stuff is in PDFs, Excel files, maybe some scans of documents here and there. There's no law, no order. And so that's another challenge. Data formats, data collection formats, all these things have been huge challenges for some industries.
And it's how do you manage that? How do you really manage that? You know, so you have to turn all your construction PDFs and your platforms and your plans all into digital, and then, you know, how that is all managed, how that is all taken care of. I work in the broadcasting industry. I've been a broadcasting for 30 years, and we've seen the migration from data. If you look at the guys who are producing the videos here, the shooting here, you know, it used to be that we had a mixing board, that we would control the lighting and the sound, and all that would be done with that. Now it's all done on an iPad, and it's all programmed. We used to have 7 or 8 people Fox had 20 people in a control room. I went in and redid their control room. They had 2 people. They didn't need one of them. So it's like, it's data is how we manage data, how we're migrating all of our technology into the cloud and infrastructures. Cloud is great, but cloud is also very unsecure, and it's wrapped with all kinds of problems that we don't know, and we're rushing into this without thinking about it.
Very true, and That's exactly what I was thinking. When we start digitizing a lot of these things, which previously we could kind of hide away in a locked closet. Right?
Yeah.
You used to be able to take that PII or those employee records or whatever and just shove them in a corner, lock that cabinet, and they were safe. Now we've gone and digitized it, and we've given out that access to partner organizations.
Yeah.
Now we've exposed ourselves to quite a lot more risk, and a lot of companies are working to catch up, right? So now I think you see policy frameworks that are coming out. You start to see regulatory bodies trying to jump on this and try and fix it. And the problem is that you need that data to do your business.
Right. Well, OSHA is a, for your business, OSHA is a perfect example. OSHA has been, is going to go 100% digital by 2026. That's their mandate. Whether they'll make it or not isn't. No, but that's OSHA going that. But then OSHA, all the employers like you, have to now go digital and now do all their forms, all the reports that they report to. Now they have to transfer that from where they did it on paper to now digital, and they have to scan all that in and put that in a database. Have an OCR program, optical character recognition program. Turn those into text fields so they can capture that properly, and all that has to be done at your expense. Of course, OSHA's not going to pay you. They have to require you to do that. If you don't do that, when they say,
Yeah, that's another interesting discussion topic. At what point in time do we force change, and at what point in time do we catch up to change? And I think that's the conflict we see very much in the digital transformation space right now. Certain regulatory bodies say, hey, in order to accomplish these goals, we have to have this change, and we're fighting against everybody else who's like, but that's going to cost me money. Who's going to pay for that change? It's worked fine this way. So that's a real struggle that we see. That who's going to foot the bill for this change?
That's one. On my end, it's all about it's all about manage. I'm a member of SMPTE, which is Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, and one of the committees that I've been most really involved with is the data management, the asset management committee that does the standards for media asset management for the entertainment industry. But it's the responsibility of who is in charge of this data. I could go back to the first thing I brought with TikTok, with Facebook, and with Twitter, and YouTube. All these platforms with Microsoft and Google. We're giving them all this data, and they're monetizing it, and they're controlling. Everyone knows you go on a TV, and all of a sudden your ads pop up on your computer for whatever you're watching. We all know. We all seen that all the time. That is metadata. They know everything about you. They know when you're connected to your phone to your TV, and your kid's watching Disney, and your little 5-year-old kid is connected to that phone. They're analyzing and capturing data on your children. And when you go to the supermarket and you swipe your card, they know that. When you get your car, your smart card, they know that. They know all that data is connected and being analyzed. And who's in charge of that data, and what is their ethical responsibilities? And there's a big push for doing a global ethical responsibility on metadata. And so that's, it's a big thing.
Yeah, unfortunately up until now, the drivers of data collection have not been altruistic.
Yeah.
They've been commercial. So you've got the likes of Google who have been collecting information so they can sell you better ads, or so that you have a better conversion rate. It would be very interesting to see a more altruistic approach to data collection, where it's genuinely there to help and improve. And I was kind of hopeful when OpenAI originally came out, and that was their original intent, was that we're going to protect the human race and all of that. And then that business kicks in, and reality of
business, politics,
who's financing it. So where I'm especially excited though is I think in the medical space, while I've seen a lot of practitioners there, they are motivated by some measure of funding and things like that. I think a lot of them are motivated by better outcomes.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, a much better approach to your data, because at the end of the day, you're trying to fix something for people, not for profit.
Right.
And that's where I would like to see more people go, right? Where we go, this is for the betterment of all, and it's not so I can make a buck.
Yeah, unfortunately, that we live
do.
in this world,
We
and
do.
this world's all about making the buck and how we can, and not just about making the buck, but how we can control people and how we can, because people are really, the one thing you can do with data is instill fear. And fear is the one motivator that everyone used, that everyone throughout history is always used to control people. Hitler didn't say, hate the Jews at first. He said, fear the Jews. Politics, Donald Trump didn't say, watch out, there's some, he said, hey, fear the migrants, they're coming to rape us and kill us. Whatever your politics are, that was instilling fear. And by instilling fear, when people instill fear on you, they can then control you because you are the answer to their fear. And fear turns to hate. Hate is a manifestation of fear. So when we control metadata, we control the data that you're looking at, and I can then turn that into finding what your fears are, and then turn that into controlling you and focusing your fears into channels of hate. Because it's much more easier to channel hate than it is to channel love, even though love is more powerful than hate.
That's a good point. So something also to remember that data is our most valuable thing.
Absolutely.
Our data, the data about us, is the most valuable thing on the internet that we own, right? We may own assets and things like that, but knowing who we are, knowing what our preferences are, it's massively important to a lot of people. And there are legislations out there that are basically trying to change who owns that data, giving the sovereignty back to the individual as opposed to the platform that collected it, which I think is a really interesting move, because really, fundamentally, we should own our own data, just like we should own our own DNA, or we should own our own, blood type or whatever. To give the data back to the individual that it's about, or who's the principal in that discussion, rather than to a company who's going to use that data. What if we change the world to where those companies had to pay you to use your data in research?
Yeah, but then it goes into so you take medical data. So we all have, many of us have iWatches, and iWatches have an EKG. That EKG system is sent back to the company. Your insurance company gets that and says, oh, this guy has a bad EKG. He's subject to have a heart attack. Let's lessen his coverage. Because you give up your data, but your data then be used against you.
What if you're a healthy person? And they get that information back and they say, you know what, you have good healthy habits. You eat right, you live a healthy lifestyle, you're not as big a risk to this insurance company. Yeah. Is there a benefit there, or does the risk outweigh the benefit?
That is a good question, and how that is done, but I think that mostly they use it they use it for the good or the bad, but the thing is that people voluntarily give up their things, We go down these rabbit holes of giving up our rights so easily. People throughout history have been swallowed up by dictators and people because it was so easy just to give a little bit, and then just a little bit more, and then just a little bit more, and pretty soon, no one cried for these people when they came for them, and they didn't cry for those people when they came for them, and they didn't cry for these people when they came for them, but when they came for me, who was there to cry?
Yeah, there's nobody left.
So that's going back to Shakespeare and all of that.
Yeah, there's definitely a risk with collecting data, putting more data out there. This is a completely different scenario, but even in our company, when we started our data analytics journey without proper governance right at the beginning, we started digging into the data and then inadvertently exposed data to the wrong people in our company.
Yeah.
That's another example of how a risk that wasn't foreseen because we weren't experienced in it yet. So I think a lot of the things we're going to see, even with AI, right? There's risks we don't know about yet, and we're going to have to catch up with solutions to those risks. Same thing with datafication. As we digitize everything, we're now getting governance that says, okay, now we're going to protect those bits of data because that's what we're doing.
Yeah, AI is a big thing, especially in the entertainment industry, and there was this big union fight about AI being used to replicate actors and replicate voices, and you can have an actor for a couple of minutes. I've seen it happen. I've seen them take an actor's videotape an actor doing a scene, and then they can take that through AI, replicate that, and create and have an AI version of that person who's just doesn't say and do and act and do everything there was. So yeah, it's definitely always all there. It goes down to the how are we ethically managing this, and that's what needs to happen. What needs to happen is there needs to be an ethical standards for metadata. We need to ethically manage and put it out there. But then how do you do it? And okay, so we say okay, so we can ethically manage companies in the United States. For that's possible. But how are you gonna tell China to be ethical with metadata? How are you gonna tell Putin? How are you gonna tell any of the other dictators on this planet that you need to be ethical in your metadata instead of manipulating it to control or put your point forward? You look at how you look at how it's happening in India. The amount of data that's being collected on the Indian people in India, and Modi he's spending a huge data center for he's spending was it $20 billion creating a data center to capture and analyze data from his people and ours as well. And India is abreast with many of the scammer people that are going out and scamming little old ladies in England or the United States or anywhere with of their hard-earned savings, and that's all done through metadata. And they used to have banks of people on phone calls calling people. They used to have all these with hundreds of people in a building calling people. Well, the problem is some of these people felt really bad about cheating people out of things. So the owners of these scammer companies now have an AI robot dialing people, and it has a script. And it just says the script, and it follows these scripts, and people fall for it. And they think they're talking to a real person when they're talking to a computer. And a computer can talk to thousands more people than they can a person. More cheaply.
Yeah, but something to remember too is that we've been here before. We haven't been in this exact scenario before, but over time we've adapted. We've found the new risks. We found the new problems, the new things that have to be legislated, controlled, and adapted to, and then we've got smarter people, right? Remember when you first started trying to teach your parents or your grandparents how to use an iPhone? Yeah. It was such a foreign concept. Now they've had an iPhone for, we just found, almost 17 years. They're pretty familiar with the framework, the way it works. You get them a new one, it looks very similar. So I think we're gonna get to the point where we will have good enough controls, and there will be the right way to use data, but I think that journey is going to be turbulent.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you look at social media today, and we talk echo chambers, or we talk narratives, and you talk all these different things, and today we just really don't have a good way. Everybody's trying to find a way to say, hey, let's minimize that without damaging free speech, right? Like, how do we do these things? How do we find these balances? And it's just going to be a turbulent time. I mean, look at history. Basically every 20 years we have some kind of turbulent upheaval, right? Things change. This is no different. We will adapt and we'll figure out how to work through it.
Well, yeah, I mean, as bad as, we're painting a little bleak picture up here, but as bad as things are, we are in a much freer, much more powerful, much healthier society than we were 20 years ago and 40 years ago, and so on, like you were saying. We don't have the massive amounts of diseases we have. Yes, we get plagues, we get, these COVID-19 things that come up, I heard about a couple of years ago, and, that come up, but basically we are in a freer environment. Most of you people couldn't sit in this room 30 years ago. Yeah. And so we live in a better environment. We live in an environment where women are considered equals to men, pretty much. Getting there. We're getting there. We're still working on it. But so that we are progressing always, and it's always better than today than it was then. The problem is that we look at it as, oh, it's really tough for me today. I wish I was in the turn of the century. I wish and it's like, yeah, but you don't realize how bad it was back then, in the Shakespearean days, with all the, had this one with my wife a little bit ago, and it was like, oh, I wish I was back in those, and I was telling her, no, there was plagues and there was diseases and you weren't considered a person and this and that. And, you know, but we look at that as a romantic time back then, you know. But, you know, we're in a better, but yeah, I mean, and there was, control on our thoughts back then. The church controlled everything we thought of, that, you know, the church told us what we could think. Now the church does not tell us what to think, pretty much.
Well, I mean, it has definitely improved the quality of life. And I think the balance to sort of the paranoia about the collection of data, and I think there should be a healthy hesitation there, but I do think that the balance to that is by building a smarter city, for example, using sensors, using IoT networks, we can actually better provide for those who are underserved, while at the same time conserving resources and making everybody's life better, just democratizing it a little bit more. It's just a question of, you know, who gets there first. Do the good guys get there first, or does the, you know, are we in a, well, we are in a new arms race, right? And hopefully we win.
Well, you know, nuclear bombs are not really, because today's nuclear weapons don't spread massive radiations around. They destroy the area they're in. Right? But yeah, we control hydrogen bombs. Don't eradicate the areas with radiation. They destroy the areas that they're at for many years. But we don't have that. But we have, you know, we have all these movies about these robot revolutions and stuff like that. And I think, you know, we just got to make sure that when we're traveling down this rabbit hole, that we don't create the Ministry of Love, Truth, and Justice. We need to, you know, keep those ministries at bay, and really try to understand how we can ethically create standards that we can all abide by and all live on and all understand. And we got to spread the education about what metadata is, you know, and give it back, like you said, give it back to the people so that they can control their own metadata. You know, the problem is we have companies that will give you a free email for your life story.
Nothing's ever truly free.
Yeah.
Right? Was it Steve Jobs that said that?
I think so.
I can't remember exactly, but if it's free, you're the product, right? And I think people are getting smarter, right? My kids today are so much smarter than I was back then. They start to realize that, oh, this is a hook. This is what this is. And so that's why I'm cautiously optimistic that we will adapt to the risks, learn how to mitigate them, and I just hope we don't do too much damage in between.
That's good. So what else is on our list?
That's what's on our list.
That's what's on our list.
Any questions?
Any questions from the audience? No, I guess not. So I guess we can continue the conversation. So tell us about what you do.
What do I do? So I am a VP of Technology for a general contractor.
Okay.
And we do industrial and commercial development. And it's been a great journey for me going into a world that was kind of set back 10, 15 years in technology. And then I loved Young's speech because it was just so true to my world, right? I'm trying to take technology and explain it to construction workers and bridge that gap between, you need to have multi-factor authentication. Well, I don't want anything on my phone. Big Brother's watching. It's not Big Brother. You know, like you have to do that whole conversation. And really having that communication has been a thrilling journey, but at times it's frustrating.
Well, tell them that they're going to go from filling out that OSHA form that take them an hour to 10 minutes on the OSHA app. That's now. But yeah, I understand. I get that.
Well, we're getting it's generational too, right? And I've been extraordinarily impressed with our superintendent group, which they've been building for 30, 40 years without these tools.
Yeah.
They've been doing an amazing job, and now they've been kind of forced into using technology, but they've actually come such a long way, and we have a few of our older ones who are actually the champions of technology. Here's an iPad. Here's how you fill it out, you know, those kind of things, and they've learned and adapted.
Yeah. I mean, you think the Chicago Police Department who integrated a system with iPads, where then once a criminal is put in their database, it actually appears on all the iPads, all the cell phones of all the police officers instantaneously.
Used to be a printout.
It used to be, yeah, you used to have to go to the back of the station, get that printout, put it in their car and travel around with it. Now they can flip through databases of all these pictures. And I know one officer I talked to, and he says he was flipping through and he saw a guy walking on the street. That's that guy. And he was able to catch that guy who was a pedophile. And so it can help us in a lot of ways, and it can do that, but we have to learn how to ethically manage it.
I agree.
So I'll tell you a little who I am. Oh yeah, question though there.
So speaking of, you brought up something very important, the risk of the data privacy issue.
Yeah.
And that big companies own all our data, they know what's happening. We trust that they're ethical and they're not going to do anything with it, they're just using it to serve you better, etc. But it's still that nervousness that somebody owns my data and they know everything about me, they're prying on me. Do you think decentralization, like it's talked about, is going to solve this problem?
Well, decentralization. So her question was, how do we understand? How do we grasp? Let me sorry, I got you. How do we grasp this? All this. Everyone controls and knows your data, with the with the datafication problem we have, and who's responsible for it. That goes back to different organizations like the Sympathy organization that I belong to, and other organizations in other industries who are trying to create ethical standards for this. And there's actually in the G6 summit, that's one of the areas that is brought up is global ethical responsibility for metadata. That is one of the big topics that was done, and that was one of the topics that our Secretary of State was most involved in at that thing, and also Pete Buttigieg, when I think he was involved in that as well. So the U.S. is very involved in that to some extent, but the global ethical metadata standards, creating responsible ethical standards for how countries and how companies globally handle that data, because it's not just a TikTok problem and a Facebook problem, it's a global problem, from Russian companies to Indian companies to companies in Brazil and everywhere. These companies, how are you collecting the data globally and being responsible? That's a big, big problem. And we had a question back there too.
Yes, so to actually go further to the point of decentralization of storing data, you can actually do that already. You can store your data on the blockchain, or a decentralized blockchain. That's what's pretty much impossible to get from SEO.
Yeah, the blockchain. Yeah, so
So that you think would be unless you allow it, nobody can see it.
As of today, this pretty much unhackable, but the point is that storing data on the blockchain is very costly, since it's very correlated to the gas prices. But it is, from a technical point, it is actually really possible.
yeah, every day we collect more data that day than we did the entire history of mankind or personkind.
So without proper controls, you could actually make that worse, right? Now, storing it on the blockchain, that might be a great control, but to your point, if we just start decentralizing the data, more people have your data. Are all those people adhering to a good data standard? And we've seen from the last couple of years that's not the case, right? You might put your data in one system and then a contractor gets access to that data, that contractor gets breached and the data is leaked, even if the primary holder of the data was responsible. So,
Yeah, you put a code to how to build a nuclear bomb on a data center, and that data center gets hacked by some terrorist organization, and then next thing you know, that information's out there. So there's certain essential information that needs to not be decentralized and kept confidential, and it's just how do we do that? How do we do that? That's really central to everything we do. How we kept, for instance, in broadcasting, there's laws and rules on how long data can be kept in a news organization. If a news organization shoots an event, protest at, in a square at a thing, and nobody in that square signed off to have that news media keep their data, keep their facial recognition, all that stuff. What is the responsibility of that news organization? How long can they keep it? And they can keep it for 2 years. So there's limits on how long they can keep it. They can keep it for proper news to broadcasting, because they were there broadcasting and you had a tentative authorization, but you did not give them the, so they can't keep it longer than that. So there are standards and there are ethical things on how you can do it, and certain things need to be decentralized and need to be free for everyone to get, and certain things need to have ethical locks on them so we can keep it properly in there.
Yeah. Any other questions? It's a good question, by the way.
So I'll tell you a little bit who I am, so you can get an idea. I'm Jeffrey Weiss. I own a company called the Advantage Video Systems, and I've been a broadcast engineer for almost 30 years. I've built over 250 TV stations all around the country, actually all around the world. I built post facilities for video editing, motion graphic studios. I've built video graphic systems for things like Marvel Studios, big companies like that, to small companies like Asylum Entertainment, who's famous for like Sharknado and stuff like that. And we build all their systems. And so I've been very involved in the broadcasting industry and also in esports, designing arenas and designing systems for esports, and helping develop some of the new technologies that esports is using and all that stuff. We just opened a brand new facility in Beverly Hills, where I live, where we presented a whole new studio up there where you can come and create your own TV shows. We have a TV network called Traverse TV, and you can actually create your own TV network there and create your own TV shows and do that stuff. And then on the left of that, I also developed. I've been a volunteer for over almost all my life, and so I wanted to help some companies that I work with, and so I created a company called the Preparedness Network. And we go out and we do things like disaster preparedness training. How do you prepare for disasters, fires, floods, earthquakes, active shooter situations? And then how do you build a volunteer culture in your company? Because I'll tell you, if you want to, the three things that every company wants is to retain their best employees, attract the best employees, and to build their brand. And nothing does that like volunteering, And so how do you create that culture so a construction company can go out and volunteer correctly and stuff like that? And so we teach that. And then disaster preparedness training, extremely important. If you're not preparing for disasters, you're going to react to one because there's one coming to you. So, and how do you manage your data? How do you back up your data properly and stuff like that? So you have proper management data. But yeah, so that's a little bit of who I am.
Yeah, awesome, very cool. Where are we at for time? Can't really see anything.
So what was the actual?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes. So
10 minutes.
what was it? Go over the panel discussion title for us. So maybe pick up something else.
So that was our discussion topic. It is. Where's this one? I don't have it here in front of me.
My phone's over there.
Okay, it's challenges in datafication, privacy, security, and ethical considerations. Do you think we've covered that?
I think we've covered that a little bit. It is really a big subject because how there's been a lot of challenges that we've worked with a lot of companies. I worked with I mentioned one of the companies I worked with was Marvel Studios, and they've gone through several breaches where they've had so the big thing right now in broadcasting is editing on the cloud. And so when they started editing on the cloud, so what they'll do is they'll take their movies, put it on a server at Amazon and then their editors will log in remotely through terminals and will then be able to edit. Well, they're sitting in a coffee shop and some guy takes a screenshot of a raccoon shooting a machine gun. The next thing you know, it's on the internet. It all blasts all over the place, and everyone knows a raccoon is shooting a machine gun, and it kind of hurts their movie and stuff like that. So and there's also downloading copies of that. People, we all And another discussion we can have in this is torrent sites. We all see these torrent sites, Kick-Ass Torrents, Pirate Bay, and all these things like that. And so you put a movie up on that. You put a movie up on Pirate Bay. People download it, then they don't go to the movies, and it costs the movie industry money. It costs, and everyone, because there's tens of thousands of people that are involved in making a major motion picture. A $200 million movie. There's over 10,000 people involved in making that movie. So when you say, oh, I'm just going to download that movie and I'll watch it, because I don't want to spend the $4 on Amazon to watch it, this and that. That all hurts the movie industry. It hurts the 10,000 people that are now threatening their jobs. But on the other hand, you can look at the other thing is that they say some movies have been helped by that. There was I can mention Silent Entertainment. They had Sharknado. When Sharknado first came out, it was a dud. Sci-Fi put it out. It was one of the worst movies that came out. For people who watched it. Then they put it on. Then somebody put it on a torrent site. People started downloading it, and it gained some recognition. And Howard Stern talked about it. Next thing they released it. It was their biggest movie, and then they made 6 more of those. So if we're on the whole, piracy is a bad thing for the movie industry or any industry. You can look at books, publishing books. I can go to Amazon and buy a John Grisham's latest book, or I can go to a torrent site and download that book and basically steal that book. It's the same thing as going into Barnes & Noble and taking it off the shelf and stuffing your
So
pocket.
would you say that's in the data privacy world, right? That's a flaw of datafication, because now it's digitally exposed.
Right.
So it could go beyond just your movie assets, right? We're talking about intellectual property. We start talking about digital art and those kind of things. If not protected properly, you could, in theory, actually have significant loss beyond just record loss or regulatory fines. You could have actual monetary loss.
Yes, definitely. Because if you're a publisher and you publish your book and you put it up there on Amazon for people to buy it, and then instead of people buying it, people are downloading it for free, that is a major problem, because that's your income.
Right.
You're making your income, and you may not, it may not end up hurting John Grisham in the long run because he's got a lot of money, but it does hurt him if he loses 10,000 sales.
It does. So let's extrapolate that into other industries. You're developing a new product. Right? Before, that was firewalled behind a computer that was not connected to the internet. Now you're putting that on cloud servers, and somebody has to protect that data. Otherwise, your intellectual property could leak before or be stolen and developed by somebody else. So another risk. I mean, the controls around the protection of data haven't really kept up with the speed of the exfiltration of data by whether that's nation state or by hackers or those who actually understand how these systems are built.
Yeah.
So that's another a way that increased risk has come about because of datafication.
Well, yeah, that problem's been around a long time. I mean, Windows was hacked by the Chinese government when it first came out, and Bill Gates went over crying and yelling and screaming to Congress, China stole my Windows program and their, and the motherboards and logic boards. And, Chinese are infinitely famous for taking technology aboard and then reinventing it and coming out with their own version of it, 100 times cheaper.
Right. So
because they have no. If you don't pay your employees, your costs go up.
Right. Well, then that falls to our community to protect the data, and it becomes. We've seen how the IT guy is no longer in a closet or in the basement. They've become a member of the board because the actions or the inactions of the technology group directly affect the products and the profitability of the company.
Right.
So it's changed the type of IT people we have, And it's changed the sorts of people we have in leadership, because IT leaders have now actually had to no longer just be, what technology am I using, but it's how do I protect the business, how do I further the business, and how do I use technology to enhance the business.
Well, you know, and it's changed the way that broadcasting is done. Because there are no, you know, we used to have broadcasters, and they used to plug in a cable, an SDI cable, which is a coax cable, into a camera, and run that camera to that. Nowadays, we're IP, you know. I helped develop the standards for what's called SIPD 2110, which is IP broadcasting, which is basically everything is on an Ethernet cable now, instead of running through HDMI or SDI or any of the older type cables that we had. So data is all there, and it's, you know, and it's very complicated. So broadcasters used to be broadcasters. Now they're IT broadcasters. They have to know IT technology and how protocols work, and how subnets and masks and all the and zones and all this. They got to understand entirely this kind of technology to understand how to really run a broadcast correctly, because it's become that it's integrated into the technology of the internet. You know.
I saw something very similar in the surveillance industry.
Yeah.
Where it used to just be the low voltage guys would run a coax cable and you'd stick your camera.
Yeah.
Then it changed to IP, and all of a sudden you needed networks and network guys and IT administrators. It's the same change.
Absolutely.
Any other questions before we give you guys a couple minutes back? No? All right.
All right, well, I'm Jeffrey.
I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet all of you, too. Thank you so much.